But I think this tends to want to give people permission to stop paying attention to mineral status entirely. And or do they even need electrolytes? If it's just a scam, I must not ever need these things. It tells them, don't worry about it, you're fine. And for a lot of people, they are fine. For others, they're not fine. The antidote to bad marketing isn't dismissing the underlying physiology. The antidote is helping people think more clearly, and that's what we're here to do today. Welcome to Vitality Radio, the podcast that helps you make sense of natural supplements and thrive without pharma drugs. I'm Jared St. Clair. I grew up in a health food store and spent over 40 years now figuring out what works and what doesn't, so that you can make confident, informed decisions about nutrition, supplements, and your health. Today is a Vitality Verdict episode, and I want to tell you up front, I'm a little annoyed. I watched this video actually, my gosh, probably 2 months ago called Liquid IV, Element, and the Dehydrated Soda Business Model. It's by a guy named Scott Carney, who's a self-described independent journalist, and it's making the rounds, and he's doing pretty well with it. He's got over 500,000 views on this thing. And the reason I haven't brought it to you before now is, I guess, twofold. One, I thought, well, I'll wait till spring when everybody's starting to think about electrolytes again. So that was the first thing. But also, I wanted to give Scott a little bit of time with me, so to speak. I have now watched several of his videos, trying to get a feel for where he's at on these things. And I'll get into that a little bit more. In the video, he says that electrolytes are unnecessary for most people, a scam, and in some cases dangerous. And when I say electrolytes, I mean electrolyte supplements, these little stick packs from Element, Liquid IV, Redmond Real Salt. He doesn't name that one specifically, but that's one that I would anticipate he'd lump in there because it's very similar to the Element formula, that kind of thing. And like I say, the video's gotten a lot of traction. It's a well-produced video, and he's a talented journalist for sure. I quite enjoyed a lot of what he's put out, but I feel like there's a blind spot. So here's the problem. He moves from the marketing is exaggerated to the entire category is fraudulent in about 2 seconds. And that leap does not logically follow. Somewhere in between, he trains physiology for narrative. And when a video like this gets 500,000 plus views, it matters who responds and how. And I'm taking it on myself to be one of, I don't know how many might respond to this video. So today we're going to slow it down, separate the truth from what's theater. And at the end, I'm going to give you my vitality verdict. So why does this matter? We live in a culture that is simultaneously oversupplemented in some areas and dramatically undermineralized and undersupplemented in others. People stack 6 products they don't need and completely ignore the foundational minerals their body depletes every single day through stress, coffee, fasting, sweating, low-carb diets, all kinds of different possible ways that you can deplete yourself of electrolytes. Not to mention the fact that the ground itself, the soil that our food is grown in, is incredibly depleted in so many different minerals. When content like this goes viral and tells people electrolytes are basically a scam, it doesn't just push back on bad marketing, which I'm 100% in favor of, especially in favor of it when it comes to supplements, because I do that myself, right? But I think this tends to want to give people permission to stop paying attention to mineral status entirely. Or do they even need electrolytes? If it's just a scam, I must not ever need these things. It tells them, don't worry about it, you're fine. And for a lot of people, they are fine. For others, they're not fine. The antidote to bad marketing isn't dismissing the underlying physiology. The antidote is helping people think more clearly, and that's what we're here to do today. So what actually happened? Let me give you a fair summary before I get into it. His argument has a few distinct layers. First, most Americans get enough sodium from their diet, and electrolyte marketing exaggerates that need. Second, ordinary water absorbs just fine without added electrolytes, and claims otherwise are misleading. Third, these are high-margin packets of cheap, shelf-stable salt, basically, and influencers are the delivery mechanism for these products. Fourth, the rise of electrolyte products has contributed to a documented harm, specifically vitamin B6 toxicity, through formulas like Liquid IV that add large doses of B vitamins to their formulas. He interviews one registered dietitian who reinforces that most people do not need this. And he tells the story of Blair, who developed serious neurological symptoms, neuropathy, hallucinations, eventually traced back to B6 accumulation from Liquid IV combined with other dietary sources. He cites national poison data showing rising B6 exposure cases, 311 in 2014, 369 in 2019, 439 in 2024. He concludes that taking electrolytes, you only should take electrolytes if you're sweating profusely, and even then, stay away from anything with B vitamins. That's the argument. Now, let's get into it. Here's where I want to be fair to both sides because this show demands it. Carney is right that there are real conflicts in the supplement industry. The influencer model he describes, paying out a third of the sale price in commissions in some cases, doesn't reward accurate health information. It rewards enthusiasm and reach. Some products are formulated to look impressive on a label rather than because the science demands it. And all of these arguments are legitimate. But independent doesn't mean unbiased. It means you choose your own bias and nobody's there to edit you. His brand is exposing wellness hype. He did it with AG1. He's doing it here. And for the record, I agree with most of what he said about AG1. Heck, I did a piece on AG1 myself, and that piece was well reported. The conflicts were real and the skepticism is earned. He's a talented guy who produces genuinely good content. I'm not here to dismiss him, but this video and others like it deserve some pushback because talent and a good track record don't make every conclusion right. And when your entire brand is exposing hype, eventually everything starts to look like hype. And that becomes a real bias. Not evil, but real. And look, I'll be honest with you because that's what this show is built on. I have a version of the same problem running in the other direction. When a conventional doc tells me something, my instinct is often to push back almost reflexively. I've spent enough time watching guideline-based medicine steer people wrong that skepticism is basically wired into me at this point. That's human nature. We all develop a lens based on what we've seen and what we've been burned by. Mine just points a different direction than Carney's. The antidote for both of us is the same. Take these things case by case. Not every doctor is wrong. Not every supplement company is lying. And truth requires that you look at the specific claim, the specific evidence, the specific context every time. That's what I'm trying to do today. And it's what he stopped doing somewhere in the middle of this video. His expert source is one dietitian speaking from a public health guideline framework that has been wrong before, repeatedly. Almost always. And here's the specific double standard I want to name. He cites dietary guidelines when they support his sodium argument, and then completely ignores that those same guidelines officially classify potassium and magnesium as nutrients of public health concern because Americans consume far too little. What is in just about every electrolyte pack out there? Sodium, potassium, and magnesium. So you can't cherry pick one and leave out the others, at least not in a fair way. You don't get to use the guidelines when they help you and disappear from them when they don't. That's not journalism. That's bias. The central debate, as I see it, is this, and I'm going to steel man his position first. The strongest version of his argument, the electrolyte trend is marketing driven, not need driven. The average American isn't an endurance athlete. Most consume adequate sodium. The products are expensive relative to their ingredients. And adding B vitamins to a daily use hydration packet creates real stacking risks. That's a coherent and defensible concern. But here's where it falls apart. His entire framework treats electrolyte need like a light switch. Either you're sweating buckets in a desert ultra marathon or you don't need electrolytes. That's not how physiology works. Physiology is more like a dimmer switch, and functional medicine lives in the dimmer. Most people aren't in acute deficiency. They're not going to be hospitalized with dehydration, but a significant number are in chronic low-grade insufficiency, and they don't know it. Fatigue that doesn't resolve with sleep, headaches, muscle cramps, dizziness when standing, poor recovery, brain fog. Here are the real-world scenarios that raise electrolyte demand outside of elite athletics and can lead to many of those types of conditions that people don't necessarily tie back to electrolytes. Low-carb and ketogenic diets. When carbohydrates drop, insulin drops. When insulin drops, the kidneys excrete more sodium. This is renal physiology. The symptoms people call keto flu improve rapidly when sodium is added back in. Intermittent fasting triggers the same pathway. High caffeine intake increases urinary loss of fluid and minerals, particularly magnesium. Many pharmaceuticals are diuretic in nature, And so are many herbs that people are taking. And in both cases, you may end up with deficiency because of that as well. Chronic stress alters cortisol and aldosterone patterns, directly affecting sodium potassium handling and driving up magnesium utilization. Sauna use, which is way bigger now than it's ever been before, and regular sweating, you're literally excreting minerals. If you don't replace them, don't act surprised when you feel off. High water intake without minerals can dilute sodium and increase urinary mineral loss. This is a real common problem, especially when people start thinking, okay, I'm going to get healthy here. Okay. I'm going to start drinking half a gallon of water a day or a gallon of water a day. Many people are actually overdoing water in relationship to electrolytes, and that can be a problem as well. Frequent training, even non competitive, I'm not talking ultra marathon stuff, means repeated muscle contraction and sweating that increases mineral turnover. None of these people are running ultra marathons, but all of them have meaningfully elevated electrolyte needs. Carney's framework misses them entirely. Exhibit A, potassium. This is where his argument doesn't just weaken, kind of collapses. Only about 2 to 3% of Americans meet recommended potassium intake. That means 97 to 98% are not getting enough. Potassium is officially designated a nutrient of public health concern, as I mentioned before, by the same dietary guideline framework that Carney cites as his authority. The average American potassium intake runs around 2,300 to 2,500 milligrams per day. Optimal intake is 3,500 to 4,700, according to dietary guidelines. Most people are walking around with a significant potassium shortfall and a sodium potassium ratio that is completely inverted from what our physiology expects. That doesn't mean that everyone needs an electrolyte packet, but it absolutely destroys the premise that electrolyte optimization is pointless. And magnesium, chronic stress, medications, processed food, depleted soils, insufficiency is extremely common, and it shows up as muscle tension, sleep disruption, irritability, headaches, poor recovery. We are not a population overflowing with optimal mineral status, particularly in two of the key electrolytes, magnesium and potassium. But Carney's video tells that population that they don't need to think about this, and that is a problem. And of course, you've heard me talk about magnesium ad nauseum on Vitality Radio. It is such a critical element. And I want to make it clear everything I just went through does not necessarily mean that an electrolyte packet will solve the problem. Most of them are not very high in magnesium. They almost all have it, some more than others. And many are much higher in sodium than potassium, which does not solve the sodium potassium imbalance. And the ones that he particularly picked on, Element and Liquid IV, are in that vein. So again, there's a lot about what he's saying that I just think could have been said better. And then he does this, and this drives me crazy. He lumps together Liquid IV, Element, and Gatorade style drinks and then critiques them as if they're identical. And this is important, and I'm going to get into this towards the end because not all electrolyte supplements are identical. Not all electrolyte supplements are created equal, and there are certainly some that are better than others. But you can't condemn an entire category based on its worst formulated examples. That's not analysis. And Gatorade, of all the products, is the one that probably should be the most thrown under the bus and is the one that I've thrown the most under the bus over the years. And yet he's picking on these other ones that I actually think are better options for many people than the Gatorade would be. And then he uses this dehydrated soda line. Dehydrated soda, he's comparing these electrolyte packets, which are powder that you reconstitute in water, as dehydrated soda. Come on. Soda contains 40 to 45 grams of high fructose corn syrup per can, or in the diet version, aspartame or other artificial sweeteners. It has almost zero electrolytes, no magnesium, no potassium, and no nutritional value. It's engineered to bypass your satiety signals and keep you drinking more. A clean electrolyte formula is sodium, potassium, and magnesium, not all that other crap. So calling that dehydrated soda is just completely inaccurate. It's rhetorical, and it's designed to make you feel disgust without earning it with an actual comparison. It sounds sharp in a YouTube thumbnail and falls apart the second you think about it for 5 or 10 seconds. So here's the uncomfortable truth. That line has less scientific foundation than the products he's actually criticizing. And now let's talk about B6. It's a category error. First off, B6 is not an electrolyte. B6 is not even a mineral. It's a vitamin. It's on the other side of the spectrum. And just because it's in Liquid IV doesn't mean it's in most electrolyte supplements. In fact, it's in virtually no electrolyte supplements that I can find other than Liquid IV. And yet his biggest takedown in this entire video is based around something that is not an electrolyte. It is a vitamin. He builds the electrolytes are dangerous narrative around this vitamin, using B6 toxicity to argue that electrolytes are dangerous is just, it's absurd. Blair's story is real. I'm not dismissing that, but just because it's in a formulation and she may have been using other forms of B6 doesn't mean that electrolyte packets are in any way inherently dangerous to anybody. Anyone stacking a multivitamin, a B complex, maybe an energy drink, and a vitamin fortified electrolyte without tracking your total B6 is potentially taking a risk for sure. But the answer is awareness and better formulation, maybe, but is it the multivitamin's fault that this person is getting too much B6? Is it the electrolyte packet's fault that they're getting too much B6? Should B6 be in an electrolyte packet? That's up to you to decide as the consumer, I suppose. It's not in most of them, but Liquid IV decides to put it in there, and I think they put it in there because it looks good on the label. So yeah, feel free, Scott, to go after Liquid IV and say you shouldn't have B6 in this, at least not without maybe calling it out or educating your consumer on it, because B6 toxicity is real and there are hundreds of people a year that deal with this. But I think that's pretty important too, right? Because he goes over like a 10-year period and he talks about how B6 toxicity has created hospitalization in like between 300 and 400 people a year. I mean, that is such a minute number of people compared to the number of people that live in this country that I guess it's not nothing, but it's pretty close to nothing. And then he closes the video with this direct quote: "Take electrolytes only if you're sweating profusely, and even then stay away from anything with a B vitamin in it, just in case." And yet B vitamins are essential. They're nutrients that we all need. B vitamins like B1, B2, B3, B6, B12, folate. Your body cannot function without them, required for energy, metabolism, nervous system function, red blood cell production, DNA synthesis. Just like electrolytes are essential, you would die without either. The problem isn't the B vitamin, and it's not even that the B vitamin is in the product, because the amount of B vitamin, B6 specifically, in Liquid IV is not a problem. This woman must have been getting other forms of B6. Perhaps she was dealing with kidney issues or liver issues and wasn't clearing B6 very effectively. There's a variety of possibilities here, but the amount of B6 in a pack of Liquid IV is not the problem. It is some sort of a stacking issue, and it really just glosses over his actual argument itself that electrolyte packets are dangerous, because now he's not even talking about an electrolyte. The deeper issue is this: what's actually happening beneath this debate is a confusion between marketing critique and physiology. The supplement industry has bad actors, for sure. I call them out all the time on this show, and I appreciate Scott calling them out. They need to be held accountable. Some products are formulated for label appeal and marketing and not for science. In fact, I would dare say lots of products on the market are that way. I don't know if it's most, but it's not a small percentage. And again, worth calling out. But when the quote, "these companies are overhyping it," becomes therefore the thing itself is a scam, you've committed a logical error that costs people something real. The critique of bad marketing does not invalidate the mechanism. The deeper issue that never gets said: the RDA, recommended daily allowance, is not a target for optimization. It is a floor. It was built to keep a sedentary average American out of the hospital, not to help you feel sharp, recover well, and perform. Vitality is not about barely avoiding scurvy. It's about optimizing nutrient status for the life you're actually living. So my stance is this, and I want to be clear. I am not telling you that everyone needs an electrolyte product. That would be the mirror image of Carney's error. What I am telling you, electrolytes are tools. Their value depends entirely on whether you actually need what they provide. I advocate for intelligent, individualized supplementation. And for a large portion of this audience, people who fast, exercise, drink coffee, eat lower carbohydrate, manage chronic stress, or use saunas, the answer to "do I need this?" is often yes. On B vitamins and electrolytes, I agree. They usually probably don't belong together. That's label decoration for the most part. If included, keep doses modest, use a good form like P5P, but that's just a formulation error, and it's not a dangerous formulation error unless there are a bunch of other things stacked up creating issues. So where did he get it right? Because there is credit due here. The influencer marketing model is genuinely out of control. Paying a third of the sale price for endorsements with no accuracy requirement is a real problem. He's right about that. He's also right that you can't absorb water without electrolytes isn't a totally accurate claim. Water absorbs without electrolytes. The real argument is about distribution, retention, and plasma volume, not basic gut absorption. Sloppy influencer claims gave him an easy target there, but it doesn't mean that minerals and electrolytes specifically don't impact hydration, because they 100% impact hydration. Water is not hydration, electrolytes are not hydration, but water and electrolytes equal hydration in simple terms. And his B6 observation that adding a full array of B vitamins to a daily use products creates stacking risks is valid. It's real in Blair's case, but again, and this is why this show exists, we need more informed consumers so that you can look. I have people all the time on our chat feature on the phone in store saying, can I take this with this? Recently released the new GLP-1 metabolic optimizer. It has several probiotics in it. It has a couple of other things like chromium in it. They're represented in other products that we also sell. And I've had lots of intelligent consumers asking me, can I use this with this? We encourage those kinds of questions. They are important questions. We do not want to lead you into some sort of risk category because you're overdoing a supplement. And I'm pretty confident, not knowing that was not Liquid IV's desire either. I don't carry Liquid IV. I've never carried it. I don't like the product much, and I don't love the brand. But this is not really a problem. It's a problem of education. It's not a problem of the formulation itself. Now, his dietitian, Danielle Shine, makes two key claims. Water absorbs effectively without electrolytes, and the everyday person doesn't need electrolyte supplementation. Here's the translation. The first claim is technically correct and practically misleading. Water absorbs in the gut without electrolytes, yes, but electrolytes govern fluid distribution, plasma volume, and cellular function. The distinction between absorption and optimal hydration status is the entire argument. Technically true, completely misleading. The second claim applies a population-level guideline framework to an individual optimization question. Those frameworks are built around averages and deficiency thresholds, not around the person doing a 16-hour fast, a morning workout, and 2 cups of coffee. When the guidelines say average Americans get plenty of sodium, they've already stopped being relevant to a large portion of the real population. She's not wrong within her framework, but her framework is the wrong tool for the question. So what's the impact by videos like this? Does somebody get hurt by a video like this? Not the person who's buying Liquid IV for the taste and didn't need it. They stop, maybe, save some money, no harm done. The people who get hurt maybe are already struggling, chronically tired, cramping, foggy after fasting, low carb for months and feeling worse than expected, and now have a credible seeming video telling them mineral optimization is just wellness hype. The potassium data alone tells you this is a population level gap, not a niche concern. And then there are people on medications that deplete magnesium, certain diuretics, blood pressure drugs, proton pump inhibitors, who hear you don't need electrolytes and conclude their symptoms are just something to live with. Viral content that turns gradient into a binary doesn't just get the science wrong, it changes behavior here in the wrong direction. And I went through and I read a lot of comments. I probably read 50 comments on this thread. And then I went through multiple other videos. And what ends up happening is people like Mr. Carney, people like me, lots of people in the influencer world, and I'm a much smaller influencer than he, are putting out content like this. They're putting it out to an audience that has learned to trust them or believes that they can trust them. And what ends up happening is there's basically, to a large degree in the comments section, kind of an echo chamber of, right on, bro, you did it. This is great. I love this video. I love all your videos. They're all great. I've learned so much. I'm not going to do this because of you. And that's a problem. And it's why so many times I say to you on this show, please don't take my word for it. It's really, really important. I do not believe that I am the end all of supplement education and knowledge. I find on a regular basis gaps in my knowledge base. Pretty much every time I record one of these shows and I'm educating myself on what the topic is at hand, I recognize, I didn't know that yet. I didn't understand it quite like that before. That is learning. And that is humanity, right? We're all full of errors, and we can think we're right and dead on right and be way off base. And a lot of that depends on the bias. And I have mine, and he has his, and every one of you listening to this show has yours. What did he get wrong? The false binary from start to finish. Electrolyte need is a gradient, not a light switch. The lifestyle factors that raise mineral demand are extremely common. He ignores them entirely. Selective use of guidelines. He cites them on sodium and disappears them on potassium and magnesium. The B6 argument is a category error. The error doesn't make any sense. It's not in the vast majority of electrolyte supplements. It's not an electrolyte itself. It really creates a major question of bias for me when you're picking something like that to highlight in your video. And it feels sensational. Oh, here we have this sick person that we can parade out here and say that, this is what happened to this person. It's because of these electrolyte products. Come on. It's not. It's not because of the electrolyte product. I mean, maybe she was drinking 6 of them a day or 10 of them a day. I don't know. But the amount of B6 in there, if there aren't other issues with her physiology and not other sources of B6 besides what's in her diet. And again, B6 isn't an electrolyte. Leave it out of the electrolyte video. Do a video on B6. Do a video on B6 and how stacking it can be dangerous. I got no problem with that. The bottom line, electrolytes are not a scam, and they are also not a magic bullet, and they are also not necessary or mandatory for everyone. All of these statements can be true. Ask yourself 4 questions. Does my lifestyle raise my demand? Exercise, fasting, low carb, caffeine, stress, saunas. What specifically do I need? Most Americans are short on potassium and magnesium, while sodium levels vary from person to person and are very contextual. Is the formula rational? Clean minerals, excessive sugar, no sugar, artificial sweeteners, artificial flavors. What's in there besides the electrolytes themselves? Does it have B vitamins when I'm already taking B vitamins? Again, flip the package around, know what you're taking. And also ask yourself this question: how much sodium am I getting? Because I personally, speaking for myself, was using an electrolyte formula, a great electrolyte formula. I think it's one of the best on the market. It's called Relight. It's made by Redmond. And I love that product, and I love their salt. And I use a lot of real salt. I am a salt lover. I don't eat refined foods really at all anymore. And so therefore, most of my food is real food and requires salt. And I use a lot more than my wife does, probably 3 times as much as my wife does. And as I added Relight to see how I would feel, because I'm constantly testing things out, this is a few years ago, guess what happened to me? I started to cramp. I started to actually have too much sodium in relationship to potassium because it's a 2-to-1 ratio, sodium to potassium. Now, I wasn't running. I wasn't doing triathlons. My exercise at that time consisted primarily of weight training. And so I wasn't doing the mega sweating that happens with that type of exercise. And I was eating plenty of salt. What I found was when I flipped to a much higher potassium versus sodium product, I did better. I used the powder vitamins electrolytes. Sometimes I use the just ingredients electrolytes, which are 3-to-1 potassium to sodium. A lot depends on how much I've sweated that day. Again, context matters. And yes, you can get too much salt, especially if you're already eating plenty of salt. And yes, you can get too little salt, especially if you fall into one of those categories I mentioned above. I don't come out and do these shows on any kind of a quote unquote regular basis, these Vitality Verdict shows. I just do them when it seems like the right thing to do based on something that, raises my eyebrows or maybe even my ire as I'm looking at it. I've actually recorded 2 of them today in one recording session. We'll spread them out a little bit for you. But I am curious how you like the Vitality Verdict episodes. If you like them, let me know, because they're quite different than what I do on the other episodes of Vitality Radio. I think they're helpful and useful, or I wouldn't give them to you, but I need your feedback. So please post on Spotify. You can actually not just, give it a 5-star review, which I would love a 5-star review, but you can actually leave a comment on the show. You can also comment via our phone, 801-292. So you can tell us in person at either our Bountiful location or our South Ogden location, or you can chat online, vitalitynutrition.com. I will link to the electrolyte formulas that we have available at Vitality Nutrition here in this show so that you can see the things that I've talked about and ones that I do consider high quality, but that does not mean that they are for you. Thank you so much for listening to me. When there's another YouTube video or headline or something that I feel like deserves my attention and that I hope you would like my verdicts on, I will bring it to you here. I'm Jared St. Clair, and this has been Vitality Radio. Thanks for listening to the Vitality Radio podcast. If this episode helped you, follow the show, share it with someone, and explore trusted education and resources at vitalitynutrition.com. See you next time.
Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Vitality Radio. Just a reminder that this podcast is for educational purposes only. This podcast has not been evaluated by the FDA. This podcast is provided with the understanding that the information shared is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. This podcast is not a substitute for professional care by a medical professional. Thank you.